Welcome to the Ink to Film podcast, where we read the book and then see the movie. I'm filmmaker James Bailey.
And I'm writer Luke Elliott.
And this week we are off. It's actually due to Luke. You were at NorwestCon, correct?
That's right. Yeah, I was at NorwestCon. Hopefully some people who I met there are checking out this episode. If so, welcome. I was on a few panels talking about adaptations, talking about podcasting. Had a great time, as I usually do at NorwestCon. It was a lovely one. But yeah, it makes it so that we didn't have time to record, so we are releasing this one.
Yeah, former Patreon exclusive, former bonus episode. Mm-hmm. These are the From the Vault episodes, so this is going to be House of Usher. This is a Roger Corman film from 1960, and it stars Vincent Price, who is kind of horror royalty. And I'm sure we touched on that in this episode.
I remember this being a fun one for sure.
Yeah, this is the one where like he burned down the barn that was like around town, and it made it into the film and everything like that. Yeah, it's a fun one, and this is the kind of thing that we do on our bonus episodes. So if you want to check that out, patreon.com/ink2film. So this one, what was probably at least 2 to 3 years ago at this point, and we're happy that you get to hear it.
So yeah, we will be back next week to finish out our Wheel of Time coverage. But until then, hopefully you enjoy this former Patreon exclusive.
We are talking about Roger Corman's 1960 film, The Fall of the House of Usher, or The House of Usher, depending on where you were when this was released.
Didn't know that. Okay. I was on my TV, watching on Pluto TV. It was an app. And it was... I started watching last night, had no commercials, and then I booted it up again this morning to finish it off because I didn't get it all the way through. And they decided to insert like 10 different like 5-minute commercial breaks. It was full of commercials. So I don't know if like the first time you get bonus, like free viewing or something. I don't know.
Maybe they're trying to tempt you, like entice you to keep watching or something.
It was unpleasant. The commercials were not welcome.
So what you're saying is you watched it as if it was on like Turner Classic Movies in like the early 2000s and had like massive ad breaks on TV.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, it was the colorized version. I don't know if there's like an original black and white, which I kind of...
No, this was color spectacle.
Okay, so it did come out like this. Okay, interesting. Yeah. It was an experience. It was called The Fall of the House of Usher in my version. Some out there sort of throwback classic kind of performances. Vincent Price making his appearance again. We've had him on a few different things we've covered now. Always a compelling presence.
Intimidating, just magnetic presence on, like he just fits this horror role so well.
Yeah.
And he's kind of like the out and out Roderick is the out and out villain in this version. So, I think it's less, I mean, maybe you could say there's some psychological stuff, of course, going on, but I think in Poe's story, it's much more meant to evoke kind of like, is it the house? Is it some curse? Is it this? Is it that? And this kind of seems like maybe it was a curse, but he seems deranged and like he's the villain doing all of this.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if you look at the sort of character study going on, it's pretty interesting. It's like he's driven mad by the evil of the house, but it's also this self-fulfilling prophecy where he keeps making it come true, and he's refusing to address the like crack in the house. And like he's doing this stuff that contributes to everything that's happening. So yeah, definitely unclear what the source of it all is. Is it just in his own mind or not? I do think that's a clever thing for this otherwise like fairly campy, kind of cheesy at times, old school movie that has a bit of the stuff that I don't love about older movies from this era in it that kept me from getting like fully compelled by it, even as I recognized that it had like a lot of charm in a certain way. Yeah.
I'm excited to talk about like where this lands for Corman and where it lands for horror. But first, it was your birthday just recently passed. I want to say happy birthday on air.
Thank you.
I think that's cool to address this kind of stuff with the patrons. Obviously, they're more invested. So.
Yeah, there are close buddies. It was pretty good. Hung out with some friends, did some board gaming at a local brewery called Lucky Lab. Fonda was there, a couple of Curtis was there, a couple of different guests, Eric, people who've been on the podcast. So that was fun. And then, I got invited out to karaoke later that night. And, that was an experience. We were at, a club in, not downtown. It's over in like the Lloyd district area. Not like the greatest part of town. And we got there, and there was intense security, like doing pat downs and wands and all kinds of stuff. And we're like, what's going on? Turned out that there was a like local representative who was having some sort of event where he'd like shut down the place, and they had tried to tell my friend who had the private room that like they didn't have it available to her like after all, and she was like, no, this is my birthday, I'm definitely coming in. So we were just there doing our thing while the rest of the entire place was for this like state representative, and that's why the security was so crazy. It was a weird night. It was like the AC was, I don't know, broken in the room we were in or something. It was a sauna. It was very weird, but a lot of fun. And I found out that I can do a pretty good "Freak on a Leash" by Korn. So awesome. I'm not normally much of a karaoke person, but everybody seemed to think I did a good Jonathan Davis. So yeah, now I know I have that in my pocket apparently.
That's really fun, man. That's cool. Karaoke is intimidating to me, but I like the idea of like the private room. But I also,
there was only about 10 or 12 of us in there at the time, so it's a lot less like scary. And plus, I'd been drinking all day, so that helps.
It sounds like that local representative was also trying to sabotage. That he told him to shut the AC off and get you guys out of there, force you out. But you're like, we're staying. We're here to stay.
You're not leaving. Yeah, we got like a complimentary bottle of champagne because of the whole situation. So there was some benefits to it, but it was weird. We were supposed to have like a waiter, but they like never came by because I guess they were so slammed with everything else going on. So it was just a strange evening, but it ended up being a lot of fun.
Cool. Jumping into this specific project, let's talk about Roger Corman.
Well, I wanted to mention, so this is the thing that John Langan brought up. He brought up the Corman adaptations, or maybe you brought it up and asked him about it.
Yeah, I asked him if he was a fan,
and he had sort of grown up on them, though. He said, watching this version, The Pit and the Pendulum, he mentioned that Richard Matheson, was the screenwriter, which I did see at the end in the credits, for this and The Pit and the Pendulum, I think, which is cool. Like, right, we've done I Am Legend, we know Matheson, 30,000 feet, whatever it is. What is it? Nightmare at 30,000 feet. The Twilight Zone episode we did, that's Matheson.
I can never remember the exact feet because there's like multiple versions
different
now.
Ones. Yeah, I think the original was 20,000. I think you're right, and then they upped it to 30,000 when it came out later.
Right, something like that.
Yeah, so it's cool to see some like a classic like that. And then when I was googling it, apparently you can buy like signed editions of the screenplays he wrote, but they're like a couple $100. But it's like the original screenplay adaptations of these Poe stories that Matheson wrote that weren't even, it's not like a transcript of the movie because there's stuff in there that wasn't, in the film. So I'm kind of curious about that, honestly, but I'm not going to spend a few $100s on it.
Yeah. Let's get our whole community together. We can buy one of them and we'll tell you what it's like.
Yeah.
We'll show it on like a video or something.
Sure.
Corman, I think these Poe adaptations really put him on the map. He was in the 50s doing some of these. What they would do is they would double bill these horror movies together because they were seen as like schlocky and the kind of thing that like not all audiences were interested in.
Sure.
Horror has kind of always been that. I think it's definitely gotten more popular in our generation, but it's always been like an outlier. And Corman, he cut his teeth doing those black and white double feature kind of films that were just like thrown on the back burner, put something together. And then he had the idea, he's like, can we take the budget for both of the double features, blend it together? Can we do a CinemaScope, like large format, color, kind of big film? And this was the first one in that cycle. They call it the Corman Poe cycle. In 1960, where I think they spent somewhere like $300,000 for the budget or something like that. I'm looking at and seeing the DNA for horror films not costing very much money and spending the money in the correct places, reusing things, just kind of like upstart, underdog kind of film.
And Vincent Price was in a bunch of them, right?
He was, yeah. And so 1/3 of that budget, $300,000, went to Vincent Price to get him in this movie. So that's kind of like spending the money in the correct places. And this set design still looks great. I was pretty happy with it. I was like, wow, this is kind of punching above its weight for this movie. And I come to find out they're reusing sets from like Universal horror films and some of this other stuff that's been around. And they're just like, so they're eking together a film. They're kind of squeezing, pinching pennies. And eventually we get this. And the movie was successful. It made $1 million in the summer of 1960. So it made back at least 3 times its money.
Yeah, it's a fun movie to see, like Halloween. Like this is like, we've talked about movies that you could have on in the background. You could probably throw on all these movies in the background and just like not even have to watch them, but just like to evoke Halloween. It's so like gothic, like I said, kind of campy. The sets are like to me, they were a mixed bag. Like some of the interiors and stuff, very cool. You know, and a lot of the design was good. A lot of the exteriors were like clearly models. There was a lot of like foam that had been painted, you know, like that kind of stuff. Whenever they were outside, it did not look very real at all.
Well, especially that nearing the end where it's almost like a stage production where they're like pulling the house down and
yeah, mixed bag. But I can see why you would praise it because there at times it was quite striking. And you know the costuming was really good. You know, Vincent Price had these series of really cool coats that he wore. Really showed off just how like tall and lanky the guy was, which makes him really imposing. Like I assume he's played, you know, Dracula at some point because he would make a great Dracula. I could immediately tell. He's got the look for sure.
Yeah, and all the stuff that he was wearing was also like very silky because he talked about his character talks about how he can't, you know, touch things too much sensory overload.
Only the finest fabrics.
Yeah. Corman would go on to make 6 of these adaptations of Poe's work, including The Raven, The Mask of the Red Death, The Pit and the Pendulum, The Premature Burial, and then I think there's a couple others, including this one. But this was the first one, so this sets us on that path. It does pretty well, and it establishes the connection between Corman and Vincent Price.
Yeah, really cool. I assume this was a thing that, was it like every year they would come out with another couple of them or something? And
very quick period of time, 1960 to 1964.
Yeah, okay.
8 films, by the way. It was 8, not 6.
Maybe it was double features every year or something. That would be cool.
The legacy of these movies is pretty massive in the horror community, and especially for Poe's work, right? Like these are all adaptations of Poe. Everyone has read Poe because we're supposed to read it in high school, I believe, still to this day.
Sure.
Even dating back to
and then. Because he's so important. You know, I think for good reason. So I wanted to ask you about this color because it just like the colors were. I mean, it's better. I don't know. It's okay, but it's like they were so garish at times.
Yeah.
So
like
bright.
Kind of oversaturated.
Yeah, like oversaturated. Yeah. Like it seemed a little bit unnatural at times to me, and it also like added to that sense of everything being a little over the top because it felt a little cartoony. And I know that sounds like I'm being really critical and mean, but like. I'm just talking like as a modern viewer who has no real history with this material, no nostalgia for it, coming in and watching it cold. There were things to like about it, but there were just things that I was like, this just doesn't really play for me nowadays. Like there's one point where they're talking about, he's like, oh, can you light some candles? It's so dark in here. And I'm like, everything is blindingly bright. Like I can see every inch of this room. What are you talking about, dark?
Stuff like that, of course, it's almost like stagey, I would call it, because it's like there's a moment where Madeline is like, can't you see that I'm dying? And she looks like in perfect health. You're like, no.
Although maybe that could have been like on purpose because she's supposed to have had like a weird fixation on it when she actually seems fine. But you know, then there are points later where she doesn't look that worse for wear after being inside a coffin. So, like, I thought she looked kind of fine with some, like, red on her hands, and that was about it.
I do think that shot, we'll get there near the end, that shot where she's got her hands up and the blood and her eyes are all crazy, super iconic shot. Like, right away, I was like, that's the shot of the movie right there. Yeah. Like, I love that. So you talked about things that were kind of dated for you. How did you feel about the 3-minute musical number at the very beginning of the movie over a black screen?
I wanted to mention that. It was such a strange thing because I turn it on and I'm watching. I'm like, all right, we got some music over a black screen. I'm sure this will end soon. And then I'm just sitting there. My wife comes out to the kitchen. She comes walking out, takes a glance at the TV to see what I'm watching. I'm sitting in a room with a black screen and just this like classical music playing. And she like looks at it for a while and she's like, what are you doing?
All work and no play.
This is I was like, no, this is a movie, I promise.
Yeah, right. You're just like sitting there rocking back and forth looking at this black screen.
Yeah, is this like a thing? Like, was this like time for people to take their seats in the theater, or like why did they do this?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's 1960, right? So it's like fairly modern. It's like coming off the heels of the 50s. So like things like interludes and all of that are like kind of the norm. And yeah, it is almost like a theater going experience still. Yeah, but
I could see that. At
the same time, what I think it really was it was this moment to like sit down, get immersed, because the music is kind of dramatic.
It is very dramatic.
And then it's like an introduction into, it's large format and it's in color. Because I think it's still pretty novel to have this sort of thing in a horror film. Again, it's like not really that. It's not like a prestige film, but then they treated it as if it was for this adaptation here.
Yeah. So one of the biggest changes is this Winthrop character who we're following throughout. He shows up. Now, it's kind of similar to the narrator who is unnamed in the story. But this guy's got this Elvis hair going on, and he's wearing this bright baby blue coat and pants. He looks so out of place, and I get that that's like, I think that's establishing the contrast between him and everything else in the surroundings. But he is like, yeah, he's an interesting guy because he's like a moist performance. He was constantly like sweating and crying, and like you just had a wet face throughout. He's very over the top. Like his performance is like, to me, a little bit dated in the sense of he would go from like nothing to shouting like very easily, but then the shouts didn't seem to have a lot of like genuine emotion behind them. I don't know. His performance was not very compelling to me. Whereas like Vincent Price, who was playing opposite, was often the most interesting person on screen.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. If you didn't mention that, it's like, how did you feel about him? Because he does have that presence and that gravitas that like it doesn't. He like he's not just stealing scenes, he's like making them better.
Oh yeah,
he's actively elevating them. This person that you're talking about is named Mark Damon.
Okay.
And
Mark Damon, not Matt Damon.
Not Matt. That's okay. I almost said Matt, but
is it
Mark
his
Damon. Dad? Yeah, right. I don't know. I don't think he's a nepo baby. So, but anyway,
no relation.
I think what you're picking up on too is some of that staginess, right? Like it's over dramatic. There was this time where they were trying to be like cool leading men kind of thing.
Yeah, he had that going on for sure.
Yeah, but then also be dramatic and show their acting chops and be large for the stage.
Kind of hyper masculine. Like, I'm just gonna come in and like I'm gonna boss people around. I'm gonna tell them how it is, and like, no, you're coming with me, and we're getting married, and just like I don't know. He wasn't a very likable guy to me, but I get the sense that he was supposed to be likable. I don't personally like people like this, but he seems like of a time, right? Like that was clearly what at least people aspired to be like this guy in this period. Or a lot of people did.
But then you get Vincent Price, and he's got that smirk to him where he's like he's analyzing you, and then he's playing this unhinged character that's like kind of losing it. But you're like, how much is he losing it, or is he in control and just crazy and wants to kill his sister?
So I'm going to point out two of my favorite scenes from him, and then feel free if you have any others you want to add or what have you. But one was when he's telling the story of all the ushers, and we're going through the different portraits. Which, by the way, were very cool, like props. I don't know. I hope those exist somewhere and people still have them because they looked really like bizarre. The art style was very strange. I guess I don't know if he's supposed to have painted them himself because maybe he was like painting one of Madeline later was the implication. They all have this like red to them and like the eyes are all bugged out, and he's going through each usher and he's describing like what they did, and like every woman was like a harlot and a whore and a prostitute, and then like and then all the guys were like usurers and murderers. Oh, this one was a mass murderer, and like going through all the different sins, and I'm like, some of these sins do not seem equal to one another, but okay.
Yeah, we got Anthony Usher, thief,
usurer. That's like a fake money lender or a money lender who like makes bad lendings.
Merchant of flesh is what he was as well.
Merchant of flesh,
slaver, yeah.
Or you might maybe say like a pimp would be a merchant of.
Maybe I just assumed slaver, yeah.
Probably slaver.
Bernard Usher, swindler, forger, jewel thief, drug addict.
Yeah, that guy just seems kind of cool.
Yeah. Jewel thief, like a fucking
yeah, swindler and a jewel thief and a drug addict. All right.
Francis Usher, professional assassin.
Yeah. Okay. All right, rad.
Vivian Usher, blackmailer, harlot, murderess, mentally ill.
Yeah. Okay. I think she might have been falsely accused of the murdering. That's my guess.
Yeah. Captain David Usher, smuggler, slave dealer, mass murderer. So maybe a merchant of flesh isn't necessarily a slave dealer.
Okay, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, because they're kind of given separately. Anyway, that was all cool going through them, but then like Winthrop starts yelling at him, and he starts like kind of covering his ears, and he's like, "No, stop!" And he's talking about the house and stuff. I don't know. That moment I thought was like really compelling look at this Roderick character, and it kind of made me feel for him. And then the next scene that I thought was really excellent, like kind of completely turns it on its head because it's when they're at the, I don't know, wake, you would almost call it, for Madeline, and they're looking at her, and she's in the coffin, and then all of a sudden her hand starts moving, and Roderick sees it, and it was so funny because he was just talking about like how dead she is, and then he sees her moving, and he gets all like, oh, uh-oh. He starts looking over at Winthrop to see if he's seen it, and then he's like, oh, better close that coffin real quick. And then that's when you see that it's all bullshit, and he knows she actually is still alive. After he was just given this, like, oh, I didn't want her to be dead. How dare you say that? But clearly he does. So I thought that was really like comical, actually. I was actually laughing when I saw the face he makes and the way he like hops up and closes the coffin. It was actually pretty hilarious.
And I like that Vincent Price seems like he knows what kind of movies he's in, and he's there for the audience. Like, he's the most magnetic presence on screen. You're so drawn to him. And then he's still got this like levity there, and like he kind of gets it. I think he just understood horror in a way maybe some of these other actors didn't.
Well, and there's some real humor in this movie. I actually thought the butler, he was quite funny because the way they would have him pop out of nowhere. I thought like they were definitely being quite playful with it. Like you'd get an establishing shot of Winthrop looking around this room and there's nobody in there, and then he'd like look to the right, and then all of a sudden, boom, Butler pops up saying something. Like he always hopped out of nowhere, and I think it was supposed to be kind of like a little jump scare, but one that you could laugh about. I think when it happened.
That was Bristol.
Bristol, that's right.
Was the butler.
Not Mark Hamill.
Right.
But so, he was all right. He was no Mark Hamill.
I wanted to circle back to you were talking about Vincent Price and favorite moments. My favorite moment is partially a technical thing, but partially just an awesome scene. Vincent Price is playing that lute in the chair, and then the camera is rotating like 360 around him. And the way that they keep like stopping and blocking Winthrop in the frame with Roderick, and then it would continue to circle him, and then Winthrop would land on the other side. And I just thought it was so cool. And he's just sitting there like, what the fuck are you gonna do about it? Like playing his lute, and it's so like that's when he seems so in control, which is juxtaposed with when he's not, when he's kind of crazy and unhinged.
It's kind of a modern moment. I wouldn't have expected that for this time. Yeah. Very cool. How about the trippy blue dream sequence?
I love it. I love
that was ambitious, I thought, because you could tell they were working with like not a lot of like good technology for this. There's not the blueprint we've seen. You know what I mean? Like these days, you can look at all the other times people have done trippy dream sequences and get inspired, but like I don't know how much of that was what they could work off of. Like I don't know. They just did this kind of thing where like it looked like the film was kind of doubled at times. It was kind of blurry. There was a lot of smoke or like what's that called, like haze. dry ice has been kicked up in there to create like this haze, but then they're casting like a light on it to get that effect where it like looks like there's like a surface, and then a bunch of people doing crone hands. Yep. And like reaching for him, and then there's skeletons that are like very fake looking, but they're all dressed up, and he keeps reacting to them, and
they're replaying moments from other parts of the movie, just overlaid with like smoke and blue.
But it was kind of fun, and then he gets the axe, and he's like hacking at the coffin, and like it's very over the top and dramatic. But it was kind of a fun sequence for sure, I thought.
Yeah, I like how we got into it though too. Like he lays down, he's all exhausted, and then it's this like wider sort of dollying shot with him as he's like walking, as he's just a shadow, and it's like we're seeing almost like a dollhouse look at the house for a second before we then cut to the more typical shots that we see in the movie. I just thought it was fun and creative, and again, like you said, who knows? I don't know. I'm sure historians of film know where this lands as far as like influences into dream sequence and things like that. Like how they're innovating here, I'm sure for their time.
There had to be some. And then Madeline herself, I thought, it was an interesting performance because she's very damsel in distress. And then I guess you could say that the movie kind of plays with that idea by the end, where now all of a sudden she's the one strangling Winthrop. She doesn't kill him, but she attacks him twice. Two separate occasions she kind of starts to strangle him, but it's not until she attacks Roderick that it seems like she's found her true target. He can hear her in the coffin, so I love that little bit of madness that we get from him. Or is he actually got some sort of superhuman hearing now? He's like, I can hear every breath, I can hear every scratch, I can just hear her down there, and she's calling for me. And that was the part that was like really evoking the story. I did kind of wish we had more direct quotes from the story. I think we had some, but it was almost like they instead, and I think this is Matheson, wanted to rewrite them and make them of a kind with everything else in the production. It just didn't seem like there was a lot of direct lines, and whenever you're adapting someone like Poe, especially when it's otherwise like kind of faithful, like we're not going for a Flanagan thing here where we're reimagining everything. I would just like characters to say some more of the exact things. I'm not saying there wasn't any, but more of the exact quotes.
Yeah,
nice.
I agree with that. I would have liked to hear some of that.
Because the language is so incredible in the Poe story. Like, that's one of the key things about it.
I do feel like this is very different, though, from Poe's work. They took a lot of liberties to have the characters all, like, obviously this Winthrop and Madeline sort of love story and run away together, that doesn't exist, and it's all new. But I think it's effective in, like, conveying some of the guilt for Roderick here, and like some of Poe's work definitely seeps into this, like some of the messaging still, even though it is fairly different. And I did like Myrna Fahey, who plays Madeline. I thought that, like, at first I was like, oh, she's just damsel in distress, she's just gonna be this person that Philip Winthrop is trying to pursue and get, and then she got to do all this cool stuff at the end where she comes back and she's like this.
That's what I was saying, they're kind of playing with the trope, right? Like, because they set her up one way, and then all of a sudden at the end, she's not the villain, but she's kind of the monster, I guess.
Exactly.
She's got the madness, as he says.
In a time when I feel like women as the monster were not the norm.
Yeah, I mean, that's right out of the story. So I'm glad to see that they were able to at least keep that. Because, yeah, I was a little bit worried we were going to get her getting rescued.
Me too.
And I was like, that would be very, very different and not in keeping.
Instead, they went with this fire thing to make the house finally come down. And it was funny that I thought immediately, like, I was like, man, he really did need that fireplace screen that Winthrop talked about in the very beginning, because ultimately that's what started the fire that took this whole place down. So I just thought that was kind of funny and ironic.
Yeah.
And then we get to this massive fire, and I did read that there was going to be like a barn that was burned down. So, like, again, they're doing this all very low budget, and they found out that some barn's gonna burn, so they went and shot it. And they liked the footage so much that Corman used it in like multiple other adaptations in this Poe work, and people, I guess, picked up on it. He never thought that anyone would realize that it was the same footage of this place burning, and it looks really good, I think, for like a burning house. But I also read that the landscape that Winthrop comes in on, that's all like bleak and desolate and stuff, was like there was a fire nearby, and they just went and put, like, the next day, put the crew and the cast and everybody, set him up and just had him like ride the horse through there.
Wow. So it was actual landscape? Like,
apparently, yeah, some of the trees, maybe they removed trees or something, I'm not sure.
Maybe like before he's actually at the house, because like once you get up to the house, I felt like it was very much a set. But yeah, maybe at the approach I could see some of that being real. Yeah. It was cool, man. You know, it's one I'm kind of glad I've seen now. It definitely feels like it's good for the history of horror to know about this. I'm glad I got to hear Roderick playing his lute rather. It was pretty hilarious.
Specifically Vincent Price in that role. I think he's worth the price of admission. Like, you just to see him play this, and it's like a blonde Vincent Price without a mustache, which he always has a mustache. I couldn't tell if he was
supposed to be white-haired or blonde at times, but I think there was more supposed to be blonde than white-haired. But yeah, I mean, this discordant melody, and then you got Winthrop being like, oh, let's have another one, which I thought was quite funny. And then the same thing with like the gruel later. He's like, oh, hot gruel? Yes, 2 of those. I'll take the same. I don't know, just there was a little bit of that in the dialogue that was pretty funny, so I'll give Matheson credit for that.
I mean, overall, I agree with you. I hadn't seen this, and I'm glad to have like come full circle on Follow the House of Usher.
Yeah.
And to place this.
Did you pick up on any references or anything where you were like, oh, that this is definitely something? Because the only one I got was maybe the visual of the house that they all go to in Flanagan's adaptation, and it's the old family house, and now it's on this like desolate neighborhood by itself. That exterior looked a lot like the exterior in this film. That was the main one I got. I don't know if you got anything else.
I like that. Yeah, I don't think that I really picked up on anything. I was thinking about it too, and I thought maybe with him naming the different members of the family, there would be some connection to like these children of Roderick. Maybe he like took some inspiration from there, but I don't think that lines up very well. But I thought that may have been a clever trick if he had. I
can think of one moment, but it's a pretty big spoiler for the show, so let me reference it in a vague way. It has to do with Madeline. There's a moment where she shows up, and it's a very dramatic, over the top moment, and like maybe there were some visual references there to this scene you were just talking about with this actress. There might have been some of that. I'd have to see them side by side to really know.
Yeah, I think I could see that, and that shot and that scene is what I'm going to remember from this movie. That, and then that 360 rotating sort of dolly track shot around Roderick. Those are, I just thought that they were very striking.
I'm telling you, I'm gonna remember Vincent Price like having his little moment where he realizes that she's moving her hands.
Yes.
I just thought that was so funny. His
so
reaction
funny.
And then trying to get the coffin closed before the guy notices. I don't know. It was hilarious. Yeah, but this was a fun one, man. Thanks for sticking with us, and until next time.
Keep adapting.